All right, everyone, welcome back. We are here for our third video on inner authority. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead into present mode here on these slides. And thank you, Nattalee. Take it away.
Okay, welcome back. And when you got your free chart, you would see on your chart, it should list what is your inner authority. So you want to be paying attention to that, because that's what we're going to talk about, the different types of inner authority. And you see here we have the centers, and we're going to go into the 7 different inner authorities. Now, this is the most, and we're starting with the most common and ending with the least common. In this one, half the people, so 50% of the people walking around on the earth have, when they get their human design, they have their solar plexus defined, or that one on the far right. It's also called emotional authority. So if that, when that is colored in, doesn't matter if you're looking at your kids' charts, if that one's colored in, that is their authority. And what that means is that authority is like your personal GPS, your own inner guidance of the wisdom that's contained in your body. And it's not logical. It rarely does it match with logic. And so you're like, where do you go to in your body to know what to give your energy to? Or say your sister-in-law wants you to come to her house for 3 days, or the whole family, they want to come and stay with you. When you first get that information, if your solar plexus are defined emotional authority, it's like, oh, I don't know. There's a lot of feelings. There's a lot that gets stirred up. And so the most important thing for you to remember is that your clarity comes with time. So if your sister, we'll just use that example, your sister-in-law is coming with her 3 kids. It's like when you hear that they're coming, and you can always say, well, let me get back on you. I need to check the calendars or whatever. It's like, you don't want to answer right away when you have emotional authority, because it takes time for you to get your clarity. There's like there can be a rush of energy, or a stirring, so to speak. And so what you're looking for is clarity. And what does emotional clarity mean to you? Well, that's for you to discover. So be looking at over the next couple of days and weeks when there's something that stirs you up, and how do you get to your clarity?
Can I ask a quick question, just because I'm sure other people, are we looking for a feeling in this part of our body? Because I know this kind of looks like a body graph. So what you're saying is that clarity comes through and feels different to everyone?
Well, this wraps around, so it is kind of the solar plexus. So it sits, right in the gut area,
Okay.
Above the belly. Well, you can. It's a sensation.
Okay.
For people, and where you kind of feel the upset, or you feel your moods change. And honestly, each person, how it's wired, can show up differently. Some people's emotions spike, some ramp up. So that's more of the details of it, is for the individual to find out. When they have an individual analysis, they might get a little bit more information, but for them to just notice, how does it feel? Do you, what kind of moods come up for you, or feelings, if at all?
Right.
Okay. So the next most common authority is sacral. As you see, that's the second one up from the bottom. So this is people that have the Sacral Authority, they don't have the solar plexus defined. And it's a very kind of primitive knowing. It's a gut reaction. They do really well when someone asks them a yes or no question. Do you want to come for lunch? Or even start with, are you hungry? It's like, yes, no questions. When you get into, well, why do you want to do that? Or, what's da 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 da? It's like, no, yes or no questions. The other types of questioning, when you want to know what to give your energy to, can make you go into your head. And your guidance system is, do I have a gut reaction to that? So like I said, it's pretty primitive. And usually it comes, with a knowing right away. Sacral people, a yes or a positive response is when you feel a lift or an expansion. And when it's a no, or you don't know yet, then it's a contraction. That's this, and it can have other little subtleties with it, but that is what you're kind of looking for, that gut reaction. Is there a lift?
Right.
Is there an expansion?
Okay.
I once bought a car based on my Sacral Authority. I got in the car and it was just like my whole body lit up. This was even before I knew human design. I was buying a used car, and I got in the car and I was like, "Whoa, this is it."
So can I ask a question on that for some specification? So it's like your body lit up and told you this was the right answer, or it was a good yes to buy the car. And like, did it work out for you? Like, was it the right choice? Like, did it follow through?
Well, it was for me. I absolutely loved the car, but all my friends were like, well, did you get it checked out? Did you do this? Did you do? And I said, no, I didn't use any logic. I just used my gut response.
Okay, I love that. And then it worked out. So
And it worked out.
Good. Okay, that was my question. Like, did it work out? Did your body steer you correctly? It did. Okay.
Okay, so the third type of inner authority, GPS, is when you have the center that's on the far left. So that center is called the spleen, or the intuitive, the instinctual center. It's the function of that center is to keep your body safe. And so if this is what is defined for you, then there is a still small voice. There's an intuitive voice that can come with it, or it can just be the hair goes up on your arm or the back of your neck, or you meet someone and you hear a bell go off. You can smell something. It depends on, again, the nuances of what gets this center colored in as to how the intuition comes in. But think about instinct. It's like when someone has this colored in, I always say to, if you and I are out in nature and we've never been on the walk before, or the hike, I'm like, I'm following your instinct. You know whether to go left or right. There's just this intuitive knowing. And so pay attention to that. And it can be kind of like not even very subtle. Can also be like, that doesn't quite feel right, or it's just kind of like there's a little bodily knowing of not to eat in a certain restaurant or a certain food, or answer that phone call that's like, I'm not going to answer that. Why not? I don't know. I just know it's not a phone call.
That has happened to me before, where I don't take calls I don't get the number to, so if something comes up, sometimes I look at it, I'm like, I don't know why, but I'm going to answer this. And every now and again, it's like somebody from the school, or, something like that. So I think that's interesting. And I would also like to point out, when you're talking about that, the first thing that comes to me is there's something of, and please tell me if this is right or wrong, but it's like, this is like tapping into that feminine as opposed to the masculine energy that has a deep, like we follow through with immediate action of, not immediate action, but there's like a logical sense and there's like a method to something, versus being in the feminine for me is kind of just like, it's in that softening place of absorbing what is. That's what's coming to me. Does that correlate with this at all?
Well, it is very, it's not logical, it's intuitive,
Right,
it's instinctual.
right,
And so that is definitely a more feminine trait, though I know people that have the defined spleen that are very, have a well-balanced, or have, of their male and their female. So it
right,
doesn't necessarily make you, if you have this colored in, make you be super feminine.
right.
But the important part is that this is not on demand. That still small voice will let you know, or will inform you. And hearing it is only one part of it. It's like, if it says don't eat that, that's the first part. The second part is, do you follow that?
Right.
You follow the information, turn left, but then, everybody in the car says, oh no, you go right. And it's like, no, my instincts told me to turn left. Everybody's, no, but you turn right. So you turn right, and then you end up in a traffic jam or something like that. So
Right. Right.
that's where the alignment comes in, is when you're honoring and following the words that you hear, or the sense, or that little something. Okay, this is probably less than 10% of the people, but we're going to talk about it anyway, because you might be someone that has the little heart, the ego, the willpower center colored in, and that is your authority. And so it's really questioning what you have the will to do. Do you want to do it? It's a bit selfish. But that's the way you're wired, is to only do what you have the will to do, and not what other people want you to do, or try to obligate you to do, or try to should you into doing. So it's really paying attention to, can I follow through on that? Do I want to follow through on that? Because if that is correct, if you do have that sense, then you will be able to follow up, even if it's some big task that most people wouldn't have the energy to do. But if your willpower says yes, then you got the will to follow through and take that direction. So the center at the sternum, it's called the identity center, the self center, the G center. And this is, again, very rare and unique. And for people that have this as their inner authority, again, it's a little selfish. I remember when I first met someone that had this, we were studying human design, and first thing, she was the only person back then who brought a laptop. This is 23 years ago. She had her laptop, and she had to sit a certain way, and in a certain, it was like all this. I was like, well, she was, this was her definition. She had to get her direction. This was her inner authority. So it's really about, and there's a connection to the higher self that's within this center. So it's really about, what makes me happy? Is this something that uplifts me? Is this something that gives me satisfaction? This particular authority, you may just feel it. You may just feel like yourself turning a certain direction, because this is where the center of direction as well. But they also may be, depending on what the decision is, or what the thing is that you're considering. It might be a new job, or something that has long-lasting consequences to it. that you want to be able to have trusted friends that you can talk about and be able to hear yourself, and what is it like you might even speak out your direction. So it's not like you're talking to people as a sounding board. But you want to be people that you can trust. They're not trying to solve your problem. They're trying to allow you to come to your own conclusion. And that's what will happen. You will tap into your own wisdom and direction through having that kind of container.
Yeah, and I'll say we actually, before we got in and did this slide, we really talked about what's the language that we want to make sure that people get what this means. Because I think a lot of times we have this conditioning that we have been directed to go to other people to help us make our decisions and take advice and to be led or to be guided from something outside of us. And that's not what this is about here. It is to engage in the conversation, but it is for you to come to your sense of what feels right for you through the engagement and conversation with somebody else. You're like, I don't really think that way, but you have to kind of make that decision externally, like verbally, to have that kind of conversation. So I just want to really be clear that this discussion is to find what feels right for you in the wisdom direction that comes from within. And it usually is from an external conversation, but it's not so that you can be influenced to do it the way somebody else is telling you. Right, Nattalee? Is that right?
Absolutely. And you may
Okay.
have to train a friend or two, or have a coach and say, I just want you to hold space. I'm considering this or that. And I just want you to listen.
Yeah. And it could be like, lend me your perspective so that I can decide on my own perspective. Like if I agree or I don't agree, that kind of thing. So, okay.
All right. So great point. Thanks for bringing that up, because that holds true for this particular authority as well, is that this is when, like I said, with the reflector, no centers are defined. And so where do they get their authority? They don't have a sacral, they don't have a gut response as a way to really guide them. And so they're so unique, and their uniqueness calls for them to really wait things out, and even wait a full moon cycle, which is 28 days. Well, what do they do in the meantime? You know they're they can be thinking about it, but it's not something you want to spin around in your head. It's maybe they might want to write down some points, or and in that, then they can start to get some of their own direction. But again, having trusted people, having a trusted advisor, having a safe place that they can go to so that they can bring their clarity, they can let their wisdom emerge from them.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that with some of the language that we had on this one too, one thing I want to point out is that trustworthy and safe is so key here, because if you are in the wrong community or with the wrong people and you're having this reflective conversation and you are kind of going back and forth and using a sounding board of the wrong sort of the people who have maybe not your best intention in mind, like creating that awareness of noticing, I guess, how would somebody create that awareness if they're like, this is the wrong person to be asking? If they have a kind of no authority, how do they decide to trust themselves in that moment? Like, do you have can you speak on that?
well, first of all, what I've noticed with reflectors is, because of their sensitivity, they're usually, and just who they are and their rarity, is they tend to have people around them that are trustworthy. Like, they're very wise and tuned into people. And so you would know that you're in the wrong environment or the wrong people if they were telling or offering advice or interrupting, or any those types of lower vibrational communication skills.
Okay, that is perfect. Because that's what I'm saying. Like sometimes you're like, okay, I want to be in this conversation, but is the other person manipulating the conversation? And you just gave great insight on what that means, the low vibe engagement with another person. So perfect. Okay.
And outer authority. So this is a projector that would have this type of authority where they have the throat connected to the ajna. And again, they're all the typical centers, like the that would be authority, are all empty. They're white. So that we call it that they have outer authority. And again, this brings this up about what we talked about, the reflector needing to be able to talk to people, trusted advisors, or someone that you really well, and they know that their role is to just hold a container for you, to allow you to talk through some of the decisions that you might be making. So that what we've talked about in the last couple of slides is true for that, for the outer authority. And again, that's very rare. So here we are, we have 7 different kinds of inner authority. And so starting at the top, these are the most common: the solar plexus, the sacral, the spleen, the heart or ego center, the G center, and the environment, and then the moon. I think we switched the direction of those. So we had the moon and then the environment slide, but
Right.
The environment is the outer authority.
Right.
Okay.
So, and one thing I will say, because I was confused and I needed her to re-specify, because I kind of forgotten that, like, even if you have multiple of these colored in, your chart will tell you specifically which authority is your go-to. So that part kind of, I had forgotten about that, because I was like, if you have multiple, which one do you default? That information is given to you.
Yeah, but I do want to say something also to that. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, it is on your chart, so you know exactly what yours is, but then people are still going to say, especially generators and manifesting generators will say, well, I got the sacral, and I got the solar plexus, and I got the spleen colored in. It still comes, it's a hierarchy, that if that is the case for you, yes, you're still a generator. Yes, you're still going to have a gut response, but it's not your inner authority. If you have the solar plexus colored in as a generator or manifesting generator, you still want to be able to wait for your clarity. There's still going to be more time that is needed, that your clarity comes with time versus, okay, so say there's a $500 outfit that you just tried on and you love it, and your gut's going, yeah. But the solar plexus is like, well, it's like, well, you can put it on hold or do something, go back and make sure that you really, that the solar plexus, that you do have your clarity, that that's the kind of investment you want to make in that outfit.
Right.
Could also have the spleen. Oops, one more comment here.
Sorry.
Also for generators, manifesting generators, and there could be some other types that have the spleen as well. It's like, well, that's a bonus. It's like you've got that intuitive instinct in the now, and you just want to make sure that you're honoring which one of these is really your inner authority. And what's the main, I call it like your home. What's your home base? Right. Where do you go to? What are you observing to really get your wisdom and your guidance?
And I think that when you, for example, mine's the splenic, mine's the spleen. And when Nattalee said you need to make your decisions in the now and trust yourself in that moment, it was very like, okay, good, because that's really how I feel like I already make decisions. But there's that conditioning of like, well, I should think about it, and really think about it, weigh out your choices, go into the mind and create a logical explanation as to why you feel the way you feel. So I think that there's, when you kind of know, oh, well, actually, you actually have a strategy and you should just trust that, not let your brain try to tell you why you shouldn't. And we talk a little bit more about that in another slide, but I just want to point out, like, you probably already know. And once you feel like you look at your chart, you say, oh, this is your strategy, you'd be like, I think I knew that deep down.
Great. And yeah, it is the next slide
Yeah.
that we get into the mind drama. So here's what happens. This is part of the package. Many other traditions and philosophies talk about the mind, and human design has their own way of talking about it. And, if you're a sacral generator and you get the response, like the example I gave of the car, of course, if I would have listened to my mind, it would have said, but, what about that? And what if did I make the right decision? And this is typically, I just didn't listen to my mind in that particular event that happened. So the mind is never the authority, whether it's defined or undefined. Please hear that. It's not what guides you. The mind is a tool, and it's very useful for helping other people, or, figuring out your taxes. I mean, the mind has a purpose, but does not have a purpose in telling you, informing you of what to give your energy to, what to engage with. That comes from the inner authority. So it will try to convince you. It will try to use logic, because that's how we were trained, right?
Yeah.
We were trained in school, at least I was. Okay, write your pros and cons, the Ben Franklin method. Here's the reason why I would move to California, and here's the reasons why I would not move to California, or whatever it is. That's how we were trained in school.
Yeah.
But the mind doesn't have access to the wisdom that these centers have. So, and it will speak. The mind, can contradict what your sacral or spleen or emotional authority or whatever your inner authority is. It can contradict it. It can also, depends on how many open centers that you have. And when we get into the centers, you'll understand this just a little bit more, and that the mind can be the spokesperson for the open centers. It can also have you second guess, go into doubt. It can, should on you. Oh, but you should do that. Everyone else is doing this. So the point is, you can't turn off the mind, but you can observe it. You can notice it. Oh my gosh, my sacral, definitely responded to me going and doing this. And then I heard, oh, but what would your mother say, or your sister say? Or, well, shouldn't you be working right now?
Call that justification, right?
Yeah. So here's, the bonus of this is really one of the main pieces that brought Nicole and I together, is the mind and how it interferes. And there's so many tools in this program that's going to help you repattern the mind traps, the mind drama. So I'll hand it over to you, Nicole, because I know that this is something very dear to your heart.
This is it, right? And this is why this is what the Brilliant Brain Training Program is really understanding how much of your response to life is a conditioned response. It's something that you've absorbed as what was modeled to you when you were a child. And what was modeled to you when you were a child was probably something that was modeled to your parents when they were a child. So we end up having this sort of genealogically, right, like passed down from generation to generation of ways of behaving and ways of responding. But if you take a specific circumstance and you insert it into another family, the way that they respond and react to the exact same thing could be entirely different. And it's just a matter of perspective. And it's a matter of, that's now the pattern in which people have chosen to respond. So if you think about it, there's going to be families who are saying like, oh, like the child says, can I do this? And in some families, the mother's response is, well, I don't know, you need to go ask your dad, right? And so then the dad has to be the one to be the decider of whether or not you do this thing or you don't do this thing. So what happens is that when you have this awareness, is it's like, oh, well, what I think probably isn't the right choice. I need to get insight from somebody else. Even more than that, there's a specific type of person who's allowed to give the information. And so, the mom, for whatever reason, why doesn't she trust herself, or why doesn't anybody trust her to give her the information? Why do we default to the dad? That's just a question. Like, why? It's just the way that things have been done. It's not right. It's not wrong. Maybe the dad is the person who has the best insight, but you can't just make all of your decisions in relying and understanding that something from outside of you is going to give you what you need to know. And so when we do in Brilliant Brain Training is we decondition the mind, right? We take away those patterns, we question it, we challenge the mind, we challenge the brain. What is it that you feel like doing? And then what is it that comes after that? How are you talking yourself into it? How are you talking yourself out of it? Are you justifying? Are you explaining? Are you validating? Are you invalidating? What's the drama going on in your mind that's keeping you from being right here and confident and self-trusting yourself in the moment? So anyway, that's what we do a lot in the Brilliant Brain Training. And so the reason why I really love what Nattalee does is because it's like clearing the slate. Once you are willing to challenge the mind, and once you're willing to say, actually, I don't know where that came from. It's not even mine. I'm not going to hang on to that anymore. But what do I want to do with it next? That's what human design was for me, was like, oh, this kind of gave me a little bit of a blueprint to understand myself in a different way, and to then take that experiment and take it into that next level. And so what we do in Brilliant Brain Training is really deconditioning and challenging the mind and challenging even the emotions. Because one thing that we talked about is, you have an inner feeling or an inner knowing of something, and then whether or not you're making it right or wrong, all of that mind drama that you bring into it is then going to create more emotion. And what a lot of times people do is they end up stacking their emotion on top of each other. So we're going to really, break that all apart. So that's why both of these programs are just so important to me, because I know the value of being really centered and grounded in who you are, and letting go of all of that other stuff is what creates the alignment. That this is why you're here, right? This is why you're here, is for the alignment and the fulfillment. But you do have to be willing to challenge the mind. So just to sum it up, as I already kind of said, is that this is the experiment, right? This is the being willing to challenge your mind, being willing to challenge the thoughts, and not in necessarily a way where you're challenging yourself by talking yourself out of something that you really, really want. You're like, but why am I trying to talk myself out, right? It's like experimenting with what you're hearing and noticing, and then integrating things that do align, right? For those of us that have that emotional connection, or you feel that body thing, like I know when something's really right for me, I actually have a feeling and a sense of like my body lights up, or I get chills across my arm, and I'm like, that's moving me. I feel that. Learning to trust it, right? Learning to follow through, and then knowing that every time you're building an alignment, you're building that self-trust. We said in the other video that it like attracts like, and so more alignment creates more opportunity to become more aligned. So give yourself some compassion and grace above all through this process, to not know how it's supposed to look or feel, and to just be willing for it to look and feel however it is, and then take that information and move forward. Just keep experimenting, integrating, and understanding that when you feel aligned, you know that. And when you're not aligned, you can notice that too. You're not making it right or wrong. It's not feeling good or feeling bad, or it's not that you're good or you're bad. It's just noticing where you're at. So I think I'm done here. Do you have any
Perfect.
final thoughts?
Perfect. No, I absolutely love what you said. And human design just adds a whole nother layer and a specificity about certain types of patterns that do come up for people, that it's shown in their design. And it's just another way for people to take a look at something that maybe is not serving them.
Right.
And that's just you know, the beauty of being able to marry these two philosophies and systems together.
Yeah, well, and when you say even serving, I'll just close it with saying this, is that the brain's job for the longest time has to create you a safe place to survive, right? And
Yeah.
so what served you, you know, is what served the brain way back when, that kept you safe and making decisions based off of, you know, like, is this safe or not safe? It's a different, we're in a different reality now. We're in a different realm entirely. And so whether or not something has served you in earlier parts of your life, it's okay that now later you can challenge that. Served me then, does it still serve me now? It's an evolutionary process even within your lifetime, not just the lifetime of the brain and what we've been doing on the soul's journey for, you know, generations and generations, right? You get to have that evolution in this lifetime. So I just want to remind you of that. So
Awesome.
all right, I'm
Awesome.
going to end that here, and we'll see you in the next module.